Caregivers are anyone who provides physical and emotional care to someone dealing with cancer. Many times, caregivers are the problem solvers for the patient. My journey in Relay began in 1996 in Mission Viejo. And like many of you, I came to Relay. I did a couple of laps, maybe donated a little money, and I went home. So the next year, I came and I did a couple of laps, donated a few dollars, and I went home. And that was the extent of my involvement with Relay for Life. That was the extent of my involvement with anyone's cancer journey. I knew of people who themselves had experienced cancer, but nothing hit close to my own life. But that all changed in 2005. In 2005, my dear niece, Carrie, was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of breast cancer. Carrie was only 39 years old, with 2 small children at home. Carrie was that family member we all have, the one that smiled, the one that brings everybody together, the one that doesn't let us do the grumpy times. She brought us all together with love and enjoyment. Carrie lived in Warner Robins, Georgia. It's a little couple hours south of Atlanta. And that's all the way across the country from me. I live in South Orange County. I couldn't be part of her daily journey, but I could send emails. I could make phone calls. So that's what I did. But I was not a caregiver. How could I be? I lived in California and she lived in Georgia. Carrie moved through her chemo, some days crawling across the floor to her computer or her phone. She improved, and that's what I thought. And that's what I thought was going to keep happening. Her cancer was gone, I thought. That's the kind of information that gets passed on to many of us and to patients, families, and friends. And what did I know? I'd never even researched what she was dealing with. I was living in my own bubble here in California. My involvement changed radically in May of 2006. Carrie was back in the hospital, and her medical treatment was going to be stopped because there was no other treatment that could be provided. I received a phone call from one of Carrie's sisters, one of my nieces, telling me to get there. I needed to be there. I called my husband and told him, get me out on a red eye tonight. I was working and I needed to get a lot of things ready to be out of the office. So I flew out that night. My brother, Carrie's dad, picked me up at the Atlanta airport the next morning. And we drove directly to the hospital. Carrie's room was full of people who loved her. Her sisters, her mother, her dad, nephews, nieces. And we were there for Carrie. I must admit, I was really tired. I hadn't slept on that plane, but I was where I needed to be. But remember, I'm not a caregiver. I'm just Auntie Cheryl. 2 of Carrie's sisters planned a night out that night, a night out right in the hospital. We were there to share tea and some china cups. We painted her nails, and we listened. Carrie would briefly sleep, and then she'd wake up and tell us things she wanted. I went to the nurse's station and got some pen and paper because she was telling us things that were important, things she wanted to happen for her husband, for her sons, for her thoughts. One of Carrie's biggest concerns was about our nephew Matt and his return from Iraq. Remember, this was 2006. She really wanted her house to be decorated and ready for Matt. So she'd planned. She'd planned to have a red carpet. She planned to ring her cul-de-sac with flags. She planned the celebration for our soldier. And she talked about making sure that Matt would be celebrated for his service, because he was expected back any day from Iraq. And we did hope he'd make it to see Carrie. During the next couple of days, there were numerous trips to the hospital, and I had an opportunity to search Carrie's home and the garage and the attic and find those decorations. I found the box that she'd ordered from Oriental Trading, like many of us have done. And I found all of her 4th of July decorations. We spread those out over the yard and the house. We didn't know if Carrie would ever see them, but we could take pictures and we'd show her how it looked. In the meantime, we heard from Matt several times. He was sitting on the tarmac in Baghdad and had been bumped further back from the departure line because of some congressional members that were there visiting. Again, we all hoped that Matt would return and he'd be here for Carrie. On Friday of that week, the plan was to move Carrie to her local hospice center. Carrie and her husband had decided not to have Carrie to return home for her last days. She wanted the home memories for her sons not to be affected by her death. And she was going to be transported by ambulance, and we convinced their doctors to let her drive by her home so she could look out the window and see her home and see the decorations for Matt, all on the way to the hospice center. So Friday morning was pretty busy. We were rolling out the red carpet and putting those flags in the ground. I had no idea Georgia clay was so hard. I ended up using a flat blade screwdriver and a hammer to make the holes and then stick the flags in. One of the local realtors, who was a family friend, brought even more flags, and I was able to surround Carrie's cul-de-sac with flags. And we were ready. A few of Carrie's co-workers from Northrop Grumman, they came by because they wanted to be able to wave to Carrie because she was such a part of their lives. And another of Carrie's nephews, our Justin, he was able to join us from his basic training location on the East Coast. We tested that red carpet with Justin and let him walk up it. The ambulance came down the street, and we were all prepared to wave and watch as it drove off. And those incredible drivers, they made a great decision. They stopped, and they opened up the back of the ambulance so that we could actually see Carrie. And then those great people made another independent decision. They rolled out the gurney and brought Carrie to us. And we rolled her up that red carpet right there at her home. Her coworkers had a chance to talk and to laugh and take pictures. My family had a chance to talk and laugh and take pictures. And Carrie had a chance to see the flags waving in the wind. She told me it was just exactly what she'd planned for Matt. See that all that note-taking in the hospital, it was a good thing. Carrie drove off in the ambulance onto the hospice center. I was able to spend that night in her room with her sisters and her mother. And she had many pictures the next day. And the pictures taken during the visit to her home were one of the great topics of conversation. I had to fly home because Grammy needed to be here in California for her grandson's first communion. But I kept in touch by phone. I spoke to Carrie herself during those first days at the center and to her sisters as the days moved on. Carrie passed on the morning of May 13th, 2006, and Matt did make it to the hospice center 2 hours later. For some, cancer does not have a face until it's theirs or someone they know, and that was me. I had no idea of the commitment and the support that was needed until I was there in Georgia and saw the devotion of Carrie's family and friends. I did not consider myself a caregiver at all. A mourning period is a time of recovery, and it's a time of exploration of your feelings. I decided I needed to be more active in the fight against cancer. Carrie had been a team captain for her company team, and even during her own chemo, she sent emails to the team and cheered them on. So I decided I needed to continue her fight. After all, I'd been to a relay, and I'd walked those couple of laps. But that was about it for my contribution to relay. And now I'm here to share with you the joy of being a caregiver and a reminder that no matter what you do, whether it's a phone call, a visit, bringing a meal, driving your neighbor's daughter to her class, or listening, you are a caregiver. Always remember that Georgia clay and me pounding those holes in the ground. I was a caregiver for Carrie. And I have to say that when my good friend dealt with her melanoma and her breast cancer, and then when my sister-in-law and her multiple experiences with breast cancer, and of utmost importance to me, my husband, embarked on their own cancer journeys. Yes, because of Relay, I had more of an idea of where to research online with acs.org and to call 1-800-227-2345, 1-800-ACS-2345, and to ask questions. And I knew what to do on February 28th of this year. And when my husband was diagnosed with his third cancer, which is the sixth most common cancer in the world, head and neck cancer, I was able to do research even before he recovered from the anesthesia during the biopsy. I had the beginnings of a direction, and I started my list of questions to ask. He's had his third infusion and his 13th radiation treatment, and will be through this part of his journey at the end of May. Remember, some cancer risk factors are out of our immediate control, such as genetics, environmental causes, but many risk factors are within our grasp, including diet, exercise, and not smoking. You've seen that on those track signs as you've walked around today. As we continue to research nationally and internationally to find a cure and a true prevention of cancer, we have learned that this disease is far more complex than anyone ever imagined. Despite that, great progress has been made in the form of new treatments. For centuries, we've only had surgery or chemotherapy or radiation as the methods to tackle cancer. Now, we are experiencing an evolution with treatments more sophisticated than ever in treating this devastating disease. Biologic targeted therapies, immunotherapies, along with improved surgical techniques and more targeted radiation that will enable cancer specialists to treat new patients with cancer with the goal of long-term survivorship. And even those who are dealing with a life-threatening advanced cancer are benefiting from newer drug classes that treat the biology of cancer, providing longer longevity and improved quality of life. So why do we do what we do? Like walking around that track for 24 hours. No matter what you do, think of me pounding those holes in the Georgia clay or making notes. You are a key part of someone's cancer journey. We are all in this together, and together we will win the fight, and cancer will be only a word in the dictionary.